Good morning, Morai Rabotai, Bruchim Abayim. We are continuing on Masechet Rosh Hashanah, and we are on Daf Yud Bet, the very bottom of Amud Aleph, 2 lines up, Tan Rabbanan, going to Amud Bet. Today's Amud is being learned as a Zechud Rufa Shelma for Daniel, Moshe ben Farangis, Avraham, Rachel Simcha bat Nahid, and Miriam bat Nosrat, that you all have Rufa Shelma. This week's learning of the community has been graciously dedicated by the Mahbubi and Shei families. It should be an ultimate zechut for all their mishpachot. Amen. So we started Tanu Rabbanan Liket Erev Rosh Hashanah Ad Shlo Tavo Hashemesh. This is a Gemara that we started, that the Masrot of Maaser Yerek and Maaser Tvuah both have Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, what we call Rosh Hashanah, as the Rosh Hashanah for the Maserot, which means that if you have the Tvuah that has been harvested before Rosh Hashanah, the Tvuah has been harvested after Rosh Hashanah, you can't mix and match those two batches of Tvuah to give Maserot from one to another, because they belong to different years, and you cannot give Maser from Yashan on Chadash, from Chadash on Yashan. You have to keep the years pretty separate from one another. And then we mentioned that we're going to speak about different years having potentially different types of Masrot, which we're going to discuss today. So says the Braita, Liket Yerek Erev Rosh Hashanah. If you harvested, if you picked some Yerek, some vegetables on Erev Rosh Hashanah, the day of Erev Rosh Hashanah, before sunset, and then v'chazar v'riket mishtavo hashemesh, and then you gathered some more after sunset of Rosh Hashanah, which either Rishonim right, either means a goy did it. You can't do it; it's Yom Tov, right? Either a goy did it, your worker did it, and now after Rosh Hashanah, you're scratching your head. If this was in the same day, can I do it? Can I not do it? You can't. If one was before sunset, one was after sunset, they belong, let's call it after nightfall, they belong to different years, and therefore you have to keep them separately. Or the Rishonim write that this means actually you did it after Rosh Hashanah. That means 2 days later, and still 2 days later is after the sunset of Rosh Hashanah, right? So before sunset, after sunset of Rosh Hashanah, you have to keep them separately, says the Gemara, En tormin masrin mize al zeh. You cannot separate trumot or masrot from one on the other. Lefi she'en tormin u'masrin lo min hachadash al hayashan velo min hayashan al hachadash, because you cannot mix and match what's old and what's new, and the differentiating factor would be the sunset of Erev Rosh Hashanah going into Rosh Hashanah, and hence the two different years. Says the Gemara, im hayta shniya nichneset l'shlishit, if it's the second year that now you're entering the third year, then this we have spoken many times before, that aside from Maser Rishon, which you have every year, that you have to give a tenth, you have a Maser Sheni. So how it works is, when you have Tvuah, you have to give Truma to the Kohen. What's the Shiur of Teruma? How much Truma do you have to give? Midoraita, anything. You can take 1 grain, it's the Teruma, and that's that, right? But Midrabanan is 3 different levels for it. There is the stingy man, Shiur, there is the norm, and then there is the generous giving. The generous giving is 1/40th, and the normal is 1/50th, and the stingy is 1/60th. So the norm we take usually is 1/50th, which means what percent? 2%, which really is the word teruma, tere mimea, right? 2 from 100. Tere mimea is teruma, right? Now, obviously, that's a play on words, a beautiful play on words. Teruma means to lift up, but tere mimea means 2%. That's how you will remember it. But midoraita, anything. So that you take your teruma, goes to the Kohen. Then you give Maser 10% flat, you give to the Levi. Now, Levi has to also give 10% of that, which takes from you, to the Kohen, which we call it, what? Maaser mina Maaser, or Terumat Maaser, right? It's easy to remember Terumat Maaser because it's a Teruma. It goes to the Kohanim, but it goes from the Levi to the Kohen, right? So that's another 1% of your tevuah that goes to the Kohen, but it just goes indirectly because it's 10% of the 10% is 1%, and you give 2%, say they actually get 3% of the Jewish tevuah, the Kohanim, right? And the Levi, who gets the Maaser, ends up with 9% of it. Then you have to give another thing called Maaser Sheni. After you have given that, you take another Maaser, but you keep that, right? You keep that for yourself normally, and you go to Yerushalayim. This is another way of making, it's like a saving account. You have to have this thing, you have to go to Yerushalayim. It's a way to get us to go to Yerushalayim. It's like, people did. You get a boost of energy of the holiness. You go to Yerushalayim, you see everyone is not doing business deals and so on. They're sitting and learning Torah, and the daily nisim that you did, a tremendous, uplifting factor. Chazal tell us that the people who lived in Ever HaYarden, their kids and they themselves, they went down the spiritual level very quickly because they didn't have the exposure to the rest of Klal Yisrael. The importance of what Rambam writes, this is parenthetically, the Rambam writes a person should be surrounding themselves with a bubble of people who are Yirei Shamayim, they're learning, they're constantly finishing Masechtas and so on and so forth. That really is what makes a person grow, because Derech B'riyato Shel Adam is the famous words of Rambam, one of the old-time favorites, but in the beginning of Perek Vav, in Hilchot Deot, in Sefer Mada, the Rambam writes, you are affected, why we created in such a way that we are affected by people around us, and therefore you surround yourself with good people, right? So that's one of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees to it, that we go into Yerushalayim, because you have to eat Maaser Sheni. You can't eat it in Chutz La'aretz. If you can't go right now, you have to be podeh, but eventually you have to go to Eretz Yisrael to have it over there, and obviously there's how much that you could eat when you go to Eretz Yisrael, so you constantly will be going to Eretz Yisrael this way, to Yerushalayim rather, in this way, guaranteeing that people come in touch with the reality of the Beit HaMikdash and the Nisim and the life, the intimate life with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the daily basis. You would see open miracles. The Gemara in the beginning of Masechet Yuma counts the 10 daily miracles that happened in the Beit HaMikdash. Such a tremendous thing to encounter. It says the Gemara, so that's Maaser Sheni is by only certain years, not every year. By the third and the sixth year, it doesn't apply. But the same 10%, the tithing that you do, the second round of tithing, you do it, it's just not called Maaser Sheni, it's called Maaser Ani. That goes to the Aniyim, to the poor people, right? So that is called Shenat HaMaaser, as we'll see in the Gemara. And therefore the Gemara says, well, aside from the fact that you have Min HaChadash Ala Yashan, Min HaYashan Ala Chadash, that you can't mix and match different years because they're different years, aside from that, sometimes you have completely different types of Maaserot in different years, and therefore another reason you have to be careful with that. Says the Gemara, Im Haita Shniya Nichneset Lishlishit, if it's the second year entering the third, now second year is Maaser Sheni, third year is going to be Maaser Ani. Then Maaser Rishon u Maaser Sheni. Sherishit is Maaser Rishon u Maaser Ani. So you can't even do that. Menanamidi. How do we know? We'll see what that means. How do we know? Amar Rabbi Shlomo ben Levi. Ki techale la'aser et kol ma'asar tfuatcha b'shana shlishit. When you finish giving all of the maaser of your produce in the third year, Shenat HaMaaser, which is the year of Maaser, right? So he singles out Shana Shlishit, the third year of the Shemitah, as the year of Maaser. Oh, I mean, you don't give Maaser at the years. Obviously, it's coming to tell you something, right? He calls it the year of Maaser. What does that mean? So Shana, says the Gemara, Shana she'en ba ela Maaser echad. It's a year that only has Shenat Maaser, right? Shenat HaMaaser, it's singular form, to tell you that this is a year that only has one Maaser, right? The third year is a year that has only one Maaser. So says the Gemara, Shana she'en ba'ela maaser echad haketzad. How does that work? Maaser rishon u'maaser ani. You only have maaser rishon and maaser ani. You no longer have maaser sheni. Maaser sheni yibatel. Maaser sheni is going to be nullified. You don't have it. That's what it means, shenat maaser. It's coming to exclude maaser sheni. It's shenat maaser that you only have maaser ani over here. So says the Gemara, wait a second. Oh, eno, ela af maaser rishon. If you're telling me already that there is shenat maaser, ha-maaser is only one singular form, so why do you have maaser regular and maaser ani? Let's suggest that you should only have maaser ani, and even maaser rishon should be batil, right? Oh, eno ela af maaser rishon nami batil. Maybe I should suggest that even the first maaser should be nullified. Just only give maaser ani. The Gemara says, no, you can't say that, because Talmud Lomar, the Pasuk says, Ve'el al-Levim tedaber, speak to the Levim, to the Levites, Ve'amarta aleim, tell them, Ki tikchu me'et b'nei Yisrael et maaser, when you take from Klal Yisrael, the maaser that you take, Asher natati lachem meitam benachalatchem, that I have given it to you, the Levim, from them, the rest of the Jews, benachalatchem, as your portion of inheritance. So it says, the Gemara, now, the Levim don't have a nachala, right? En la'em chelek v'nachala, ani nachalatam, the Pasuk says. What's the chelek and nachala of the rest of the Klal Yisrael? They have their land. Levim don't have their own lands. They're scattered around in the lands of the other Shvatim. They're all over the place, right? The rest of the Shvatim have their lands. That's my Nachala. That's my Yerusha. That's my inheritance. So here, the Pasuk calls the Maaser Rishon that's given from the Jewish nation to the Levim, Nachalatchem. This is their portion. So says the Gemara, Hikisha Katuv Nachala. The Pasuk is comparing the maaser that you give to the Levi to the nachala that you have. It's just their nachala, right? Instead of your nachala. Hikisha katuv lenachala. Ma nachala ela hefsek. What, do you have hefsek in your nachala? It's yours, it's forever, right? This is your land. It's going to your land, it's going to stay your land forever. Every year is your land. There's no pausing the nachala. If maaser rishon en lo hefsek. Maaser Rishon also doesn't have hefsek. It's a yearly, consistent thing. Every single year that you have tevuah, you have to give maaser. Says the Gemara, Tanya Idach, a different Braita brings a different proof for this. Ki techalel aser, when it says techalel aser et kol tevuatecha b'shana hashilishit, that same pasuk that we just had, shana she'en ba ela maaser echad. It's a year that only has one maaser. Haketzad, how does that work? Maaser rishon, maaser ani. It's maaser rishon and maaser ani. So far, it's the same as the previous Braita. Maaser sheni batel. Says the Gemara, maaser sheni is going to be batel because you only have one. Yachol af maaser rishon nami batel. Says the Gemara, can it be possible that Shenat Maaser, which means singular form, means that even Maaser Rishon is going to be nullified? Says the Gemara, no. Talmud Lomar, now this is a different pasuk. So far it was the same, right? The structure at the beginning of the Braita is the same. How do I know that on the third year you only have Maaser Ani, not Maaser Sheni? So the beginning was the same. Now the question, the Gemara, let's suggest that even Maaser Rishon should not be there. How do you know the Maaser Rishon is a yearly thing that you have every year and it never stops? So in the previous Braita we had one proof. In this second Braita we have a different proof. Says the Gemara, Talmud Lomar uba Levi ki lo en lo chelek v'nachala. The Levi is going to come and take his Maaser Rishon from you, right? Says the Gemara, Kol zeman sheba. Why does it say uba Levi? Let the Levi come and take his maaser. Why do you have to say let him come? It's going to teach you that any time that he comes, any year that he comes, he takes his maaser. There's no year that he can't come to take his maaser. Kol zeman sheba tenlo. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, whose Mishnah is kav v'naki, his halacha is always like him. He says, Eno tzarich. You don't have to say it from Uba Levi, because Hareu Omer, Vera Levi, he has the same proof as we brought in the previous Braita. Rabbi Yisraeli says the same thing. Vera Levim tedaber, speak to the Levim, ve'amarta alehem, tell them, ki tikchu me'et bnei Yisrael et ha'maaser asher natati lachem me'itam b'nachalatchem. When you take the maaser that I have given to you from the rest of Klal Yisrael in your nachala, as your inheritance, hikisha katuv le'nachala. The pasuk is comparing the maaser with inheritance of the land. Manachala, just like the land that you inherit, and la hefsek, the rest of the shvatim who inherit land. There's no hefsek, there's no stopping it. Af maaser rishon and lo hefsek. Maaser rishon also does not have any stopping. Every single year you're going to have it. So therefore, let's backtrack. The Gemara just said that aside from having Rosh Chodesh Tishrei being Rosh Hashanah, for Masrot that before and after is separate, it also is the Rosh Hashanah for when the second year finishes and the third year starts, or the fifth year finishes and the sixth year starts, because third and sixth year, they have different Masrot. So not only you can't give from Yashan to Chadash, there are going to be completely different categories of Maaser, because this previous one, you have to separate Maaser Rishon and Maaser Sheni from. And this new one, you have to separate Maaser Rishon and Maaser Ani from. It's completely different things. And therefore, you need a point of time to differentiate between them. And that point of time is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, the Erev Rosh Hashanah before sunset versus Erev Rosh Hashanah after sunset. And that's what the Gemara says. So says the Gemara, another item that the Braita introduced to us for Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is Vela Nedarim. That Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is a Rosh Hashanah for Nedarim. When you make a Neder, Nazir, all those things are Nedarim. And Rosh Hashanah for them is the Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. So says the Braita, Taran Rabbanan, Ha Mudarana Mechaver. If someone says, I am not going to have Hana from Reuben, Leshana, for a whole year, I am not going to have Hana from someone we don't have in this year, okay? I'm not going to have Hana from this guy for a whole year, right? I mean it in that way. Says the Gemara, Hamudar Aram Mechavero Leshana, Mone Shenayim Asar Chodesh Miyom Leyom. You count from today, 12 Chodashim. From today. You said for a whole year starts from today, goes for a whole full year, right? 12 months until this day. Says the Gemara, if you said only for this year. So this year, I'm not going to have an hour from this guy, right? So says the Gemara, Afilu lo amad ela be-29 be'elul. Even if you're in the last day of Elul, Elul is never a full month, it's always 29, right? Even if you are standing in the last day of Elul and you said this, you said, for this year I'm not going to have any Hana from him. Tomorrow, Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, it's a new year, then you can start having Hana from him, no problem. Because you said this year, not a year. If you say a year, so it's a full year. But if you said this year refers to the years that we count, and the count of the year starts from Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. Therefore, if you're in the last day of the year saying, this year I'm not going to have Hana'ah, so half a day passes and your neder is up. Says the Gemara, Kevan Shigia Yom Echad BeTishrei, once tomorrow comes, the first day of Tishrei comes, Alta Lo Shana, you already have fulfilled your year of not having Hana'ah from this guy, and then you could go back to normal. Even according to the Manda Amar, that Yom Echad B'Shana Eno Chashuv Shana. We had a whole machlokes back and forth, right? Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Yom Echad Chashuv Shana, not Chashuv B'Shana. For we mentioned that perhaps even Rabbi Meir, who says Yom Echad Chashuv Shana, there's an exception when you're moving houses, right? Nobody moves for less than a month, right? So therefore, it depends. If you have a month, you don't have a month, right? But we had a general machlokes, and Rabbi Meir is the one that holds Yom Echad B'Shana Chashuv Shana. Even according to that, over here is different. Why is it different? So even according to the Mandamar, that Yom Echad B'Shana Eno Chashuv Shana, right? Remember that we said even Rabbi Meir agrees that for moving houses, it's not going to be Chashuv Shana, because nobody is going to move for less than 30 days. Lesa'ur nafsheh kabila le, v'ha ista'er le. It says over here, he wanted to have a little restriction, and that's good enough. Meaning, you would have thought maybe, the same Rabbi Meir that by moving houses would say, oh no, you at least need a month, because nobody moves for less than a month. So maybe there is a logic to be argued over here as well. Well, nobody is going to say such a neder, I'm going to be mudar hana from this guy for this year, and he means really half a day. Right? Maybe the logic should dictate that no one would say such a thing, so therefore we should read into his neder that he meant the whole year. And there you would go until the last day of next year, which would be a full year, right? There is room to argue that, especially knowing that Rabbi Meir himself agrees that if you said that by moving houses less than a month, it doesn't count, because nobody says, I'm going to move for less than a month, right? One says no. Here, even for half a day, people would say it, because you want to be a little bit restricted, and that little bit could be even half a day, and that's a restriction, right? Because today you're taking a chance. Today something happens, and you need your neighbor, you need your friend, and you can't do it, and that's a restriction, and that is enough of a restriction that a person would say it even for half a day. So says the Gemara, therefore, even according to Rabbi Meir, that over there agrees that you need a minimum. Over here, you don't need a minimum, because you accepted it to be Messiah yourself by restricting yourself, and you have done that already. Ve'ema Nisan, says Gemara, who says that Rosh Hashanah for Shanim, for the Nedarim, should be Rosh Chodesh Tishrei? Maybe it should be, we said this by every one of them, right? So we throw it in. Maybe it's Nisan. Maybe Rosh Hashanah for Nedarim should be Echad Ben-Nisan. Says the Gemara, no. Ben-Nedarim, Helech Achar Ashon Bnei Adam. This is not even a question. Because in Nedarim, always, Masechet Nedarim is always like this. That when people make Nedarim, they're saying something, we go after what people mean by what they say. It's not a biblical thing. It's what people recognize as. So whereas we recognize that we have Arba Rashi Shanimim, we have 4 different types of Rosh Hashanahs. By Lashon Bnei Adam, when people speak about Rosh Hashanah years, they mean one thing, and one thing only, and that is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. When we talk about Rosh Hashanah, we always mean Rosh Chodesh Tishrei, and therefore when I say year, when in my Lashon Nedarim, I use a year, I am referencing what people reference as a year, which means from Tishrei to Tishrei. That's what people mean. When people say a year, they're not thinking about Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Is because say, oh, I remember the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah at the beginning, Arba Rosh Hashanah. Nobody is thinking like that. In Lashon Bnei Adam, there's one Rosh Hashanah, and that is Echad B'Tishrei. So in anything regarding Nedarim, we go after what people mean by saying those things. And when they say a year, they are referencing the Rosh Hashanah, the Rosh Hashanah that we talk about always, and that is Rosh Chodesh Tishrei. So it says the Gemara, therefore, Benedarim Helech Achar Lashon Bnei Adam, which really ends this part of the daf. And next part, we're going to have actually another fascinating Zeraim piece. This is again daf Yud Bet, Yud Gimel, Yud Dalit. Is very much a segue into beautiful pieces of halacha that are regarding the concept of Zeraim before we jump into Daf Tet Zayin, which is going to be purely judgment of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah Yechatevun, Ubeyom HaKippurim Yechatevun. We're going to get into the real judgment of the day of Rosh Hashanah, Gishmak Sugis, and we're going to continue this in the next year.